Welcome back to the podcast. It is Nina Kovner here with a very special guest to wrap up not only 2019, but the entire fucking decade, which I cannot believe. And there is no person I could do this with except one. No other person I could do this with except one. And that is my bestie, Gordon Miller.
Oh,
Gordon, welcome back to the podcast.
thank you, Nina. And today we launched Hairbrain Conversations with you and me in Portland.
We
What a
did.
coincidence.
I know, that is kind of funny. Live from Portlandia.
It was great.
Loved
So good.
having you here. That was such a fun episode. I haven't listened to it yet because I just had to admit to a friend of mine that I don't enjoy listening to myself on podcasts. Do you listen to yourself on your podcast?
I have I do my own edits,
Oh,
I have help
right.
with the production team. I also am very conscious of my guests and, making sure that they're in a kind of a safe place. I promise to them always. So I listen to every episode 3 times. And so a first edit, a second edit, and a final working with the production crew. And so, yeah, I'm kind of used to my voice. Just like you, I
Mm,
hated it in the beginning.
yeah.
But, I'm used to it.
And just so everybody knows, this is live and it's obviously and super raw because this is not going to be edited.
Yeah.
So my bestie Gordon does do and enjoy lots of editing, and so I'm
Not lots, not lots.
super grateful. I'm super grateful that you said yes to this, knowing that there was going to be no editing. So
Mhm.
let's dive in. Let's dive in. There's
Ooh,
so much to talk about.
so
And
much.
I mean, a decade, right? Like so many things. And then, of course, I do want to talk about the future. So let's do it. Highlights of the decade. Let's look at that in terms of like I want to know like your personal kind of highlights and milestones, anything you're proud of, your growth, but also business milestones and general like what an amazing decade.
Yeah, like most decades, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
but yeah, fascinating, game-changing decade for most of us, and I know for you and me, because we kind of just went all in with social and digital over the course of that decade, and it
We
was crazy.
sure did.
Like we're like embedded deep.
Shit.
And it's because of what has transpired with it, with all the platforms and to me, like the biggest when I think about the decade, probably the number one thing on my list is the adoption of massive amounts of people to social and digital generally, like participating, because everything else wouldn't be happening. If people hadn't jumped in Facebook in a really big way and were going in other directions as well online, there probably would have never been an Instagram, and on and on and on. It's this movement of people to the platforms that's just been profound.
Yeah, it really is. And to me, I'm so glad you brought that up because you and I did not talk before this podcast. So I
Right.
don't know what your milestones are versus my milestones, but it really was this revolution
Hmm.
of online tools that empowered small business, which was the whole inspiration behind Passion Squared,
Hmm.
which you and I began working on in 2011.
Gosh.
I know it's so fucking nuts because I was just looking up this morning a book that had a significant impact on you and I was The Thank You Economy
Hmm.
by Gary Vaynerchuk, now known as Gary V. And that book was launched in March 2011.
And we were talking about Gary Vee when no one knew who the hell we were talking about.
I know.
And you interviewed him on a
I
Passion
know
Squared,
he's
you know?
still on that interview, still on the Passion Squared
Yeah.
website. That was I think 2013 when I had the opportunity to interview Gary. So that's so nuts. But I love how you frame this in the adoption because you're right. If we did not choose to show up on the platforms,
Mhm.
none of this would have happened. I love that one. I love that one.
And there's like tipping points in all of it. I feel like you hit a certain amount of mass and certain things happen. And we're at such a global mass scale now of adoption. You know, it should not be a surprise that TikTok came out of China and is looking at global domination from a social perspective. And who knows where
Right.
that's going to
Yeah.
go.
Well,
We'll
yeah.
we'll talk about that in
Yeah, I've
predictions.
got that on my right. I've got that on my predictions also. Um yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's interesting because I think I'm finally over the fact that nobody would listen to us in 2012.
Nobody, nobody.
But
But we're still here.
I almost have to always bring that up just because clearly there's a little resentment still somewhere in my nervous system. But it's so true. Like it's interesting because I mean, I work still to this day helping salons and creative small business owners with
Mhm.
social and digital and brand, all the other stuff. And I still get I just am not sure about all this. And it's like, okay, I'm cool with that
Mhm.
now. Like, I'm like, I understand. But it really is without that adoption. And because that adoption, actually, it took a long time,
Mhm.
in certain industries, AKA the beauty industry,
Uh,
that's what made the beginning of Passion Squared such a fucking struggle
mhm.
because nobody would listen.
And the adoption kind of comes in waves in terms of like categories of use. So first was personal, and I always use the metaphor of the real world, and it's like little towns, and as communities get bigger and bigger and bigger, businesses start to show up because there's money to be had. And so we watched kind of the adoption of the personal, and then we've watched this slower adoption of the professional and the business using it as a tool. And I just think one of my biggest disappointments of the decade is that we are not farther along
Oh,
as a profession in terms of utilizing these platforms in meaningful ways to drive our businesses and careers. We're so far from getting to where we need to be collectively.
well, absolutely. When we think about what I call the awesome client journey, and it really inspired by Brian Solis, who is another one that we both have mad respect for,
Mm,
a thought leader. I know that
totally.
word's kind of like annoying, but in the digital space.
Uh,
And really looking at it, from the beginning of intent to search to discovery to action. And we all consumers have had intent. We've been online, we've been Googling forever, we've been Yelping forever, we've been doing all these things. I mean, remember Foursquare?
oh my
Like
gosh.
we've done all these things for so long. Yet when it comes to the search discovery action, if I can't and I here comes broken record time. If I can't
Mm,
book an appointment with you, like, we both say at 10 p.m., you fucking lost the game. Like, it's
totally.
over. I don't care how cute your content is or if you like do great video or it doesn't fucking matter,
Hmm.
And so it's like just the basic fundamentals, which to you and I obviously have been fundamentals for a long time, whether that be, online booking or text confirmation or just the basics and thinking about the technology that's been available this entire decade.
You and I have been banging the drum together and independently on Yelp and reviews,
I
that and the evolution of the review platforms and online booking for pretty much a decade.
Well, yeah, well, for sure, since Passion Squared started, yeah. So it's like that is disappointing. It's absolutely
Mhm.
disappointing, and the disappointment comes from, I know for both you and I, the fact that there's so much missed opportunity, and in an industry that struggles as it does, which let's be honest, right?
Mhm.
We have to be honest about the average hairdresser and the average profitability of a salon and the amount of salon closings and failures and all of those things. And it's like I learned very early in my old life, in my former life and career, it's so much of creating a sustainable, successful business is executing the fundamentals consistently. Executing the fundamentals consistently, to me, part of that means through this decade is having the tools to allow your clients, existing and future, to fucking engage with you, to do business with you. Like, if I can't just book an appointment, then it's like you've lost, Anyways, I'm glad you brought that up.
And by the way, that was true before the internet, quote unquote, or social media was even invented,
Yeah,
right? Because we're old enough to remember the stories going to conferences and meetings where really successful people were standing up in front of rooms saying, you've got to manage your desk effectively in terms of how you book appointments and greet clients when they walk in the door. Right. And so, we have the same problem in a different context today.
Right. And that's the thing. You're so right. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's like those offline fundamentals are still legit. You know what I mean? Like, those systems have to still be running 100%. But now we have this new awesome layer that was brought to us in this past decade with the online space and the way that these tools can empower small businesses, and whether it be online booking or whether it be referrals from Yelp or whatever, building relationships on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, it's still, none of it's going to matter if you do not evolve, right? I mean, if we don't embrace and evolve and adopt and all those things, then we're fucking done.
And then you always say, you need to be where your community is at. And our communities, our potential customers, our customers, the professionals that we want to engage, they're all on social, they're all online, as well as in the real world, but you can connect with them on social. So that's part of the why behind all this, that they're there.
Yeah. I know. Fear. We fear what we don't understand. We fear making a mistake. We fear looking. I know for my generation, shout out to Gen X, the forgotten generation. It always, in all the studies, it goes baby boomer, millennial, Gen Z.
So
and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Where's my fucking generation? We're here. We are in therapy. We are trying to heal, but we are fucking here.
And the baby boomers, we're in denial.
You're the okay boomer generation.
We skip therapy and just go straight to denial.
Exactly right. I just had to okay boomer you at least once, so now I've done it twice. And you're not an okay boomer person though. You get it, but but it is absolutely there. I understand obviously that we are not digital natives. We did not grow up with this stuff. This is not natural to us. But that is not an excuse if you want to be in business in 2019 and in the 2020s, the roaring 20s. So, you got to get it together. And that is, one thing, milestone, kind of speaking to this, is a shift in business model. Mm-hmm. I mean, talk about, I don't know if that's on your list, but.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Oh, boy, it's a big one. Well, let's start with, let's define it first, right?
Okay.
So been around, both of us, for a long time, and we know that the commission model for much of our professional lives was the predominant model in most of the country, but we also know that rental, in whether it is in certain communities, in particularly minority communities, or in certain geographic areas, the West Coast, the Southwest, rental has long been, a prominent business model, but nationally, not so much. And then we've seen, with evolution of social and digital, all these tools that become available that I think inspired a lot of people to go out on their own. And we've seen this massive shift towards rental that I think is very much being driven by much of what we just talked about.
Well, access, right? The democratization of access, and the ability to, even though, let's be clear, whether you're an employment-based model or a lease-based model, you've always had the power to market yourself, FYI. Yes. But for some reason, the social space most definitely inspired entrepreneurs. I also really feel it speaks to generational shifts with the millennials craving more flexibility, more freedom, more creativity, all of that. So I feel like there was a generational push layered on top of that, access and democratization through social. And I mean, that's a big part of it. And even really also just the way that people do business, like capturing content and changing the way they do appointments. Like back when I started, and we're not old, we're wise, by the way. We're vintage. We're vintage. Um, Back when
Yeah.
I started, when I was working in the salon in the late 80s,
Mm.
if someone said there was going to be a 4-hour hair appointment, or
Right?
even color
Or how
correction
about all
wasn't,
day? How about all
and
day?
all day, like, but now look at color placement, color creativity, and what that's turned into these incredible, we've always had vivids. I mean, I had purple hair when I was um I had purple hair when I was in elementary school, and I got not suspended. I got, what happens when you grounded? I got grounded. I did
Ah,
get suspended. That was in early elementary school. I got grounded for turning my hair purple. So the Vivids aren't new, but what is new is all of this creativity, which has changed the way that people do business in these 8-hour appointments. Like you see it on Instagram. Like this session took 8 hours, and it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
well, I
How?
would add.
Go ahead. Go
Uh,
ahead. Go ahead. Go
no,
ahead.
I just would add that Vivids is a great example, and I think the barber space is a little bit different version of a similar example of what I'm going to say, which is that to me, from a marketing perspective and kind of the giant changes we're talking about, it was this big kind of unexpected and not so much on purpose. Hey, look at us. We're the professional salon industry. You may not want this on your head because most people don't, but look what we are capable of. And if we can do this, we can do anything because we know the majority of hair color is still, in other categories.
Absolutely.
And Vivids is a tiny, tiny little slice of the pie. But what a marketing bonanza for the professional salon
Oh,
industry, period. And the same, and barbers and men's grooming in a similar way,
yeah.
in a different category. But
And nails. And nails.
and nails, yep. But I just think it's so important to say that so much of the business is being driven by these slices of the pie content that are significant, big, lots of people paying attention to them. That again, it's the, hey, look at us and come experience whatever you want to experience. And I think it's created a new level of respect and confidence in this industry, which would have never happened if
I
it
could
wasn't for
not
social and
agree
digital.
more. I could not agree more. I want to go back to business model, and then I want to go back to nails. On the business model thing, the thing that the big shift in where salons that get it have done a good job is reimagining those experiences and not being so hung up on, well, we book on the 45 and we are
Mm-hmm.
not going to change that. Again, change the system, change the result. Change the system, change the result. If you cannot deliver a 2019 experience in an old business model, change the fucking model. Change
Mm-hmm.
the system, change the results. So if you used to book on the 45, but now you want to capture content, now you want to share that content with the guests, now you want to ask people to share their experience on Yelp, now you want to, whatever you want to do, then why aren't you booking an hour and 15 instead of 45? It's these basic things. And so people are like, well, how do they do this or how do they do that? There's so many ways to do it, but something's got to shift. And so what I've seen is the people that have been more open to the shift, to changing the system, to adapt to what's happening are the ones that are doing, really well in this past decade of this adoption that you started out with. The nail thing.
Wait. I
Oh,
want
go
I want
ahead.
to
Go,
stop.
go,
I want to go
go,
back.
go.
Before you move on to nails, because I have to say this on the business model piece,
Yeah.
and that is the generational thing and something connected to it. So before we had digital and social, again, you and I have been around a bit. The level of dissatisfaction of employees generally in the salon industry, across the salon industry, with management, with employers, I would argue from years of anecdotal feedback, the level of dissatisfaction was very, very high. But there was
Very.
no place to go. There
Nope.
was go up the street. Oh, they won't hire because I work over here. Or there was go up the street and drag clientele with me, which we know that's not cool. So there was a lot of blocks and people were stuck, and we saw a lot of people leave the industry. We saw a lot of people, quit and stay, And all of a sudden, these tools started to open new doors. And by the way, we didn't mention suites, but not only did rental begin to explode, but we saw a category of rental explode in a really big way. And I think so much of it comes from this dissatisfaction that's systemic in the industry. And I would argue, going back to the generational point, that so much of the dissatisfaction has always been about management and ownership being in one generation and everybody else in another, just because of age. So you're 40 when you open your salon, and most of your staff is in their 20s. And if you don't have respect and an understanding of how to manage people of a different generation, you're in trouble already.
We see that happening, yeah, a lot. And it has happened a lot in the last decade with the poor fucking millennials that get heat for so much shit that they don't deserve. Of course,
we love the millennials.
We both
Yep.
are big fans of
Huge.
of that generation. And the Z's are awesome too. I mean, it's just the youth in general is inspiring as fuck. But yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. Leadership is definitely something that is challenging and difficult and requires a lot of personal growth and maturity and emotional maturity, and that doesn't always happen the way that it may look like from the socials, that perfect, like, I'm a salon owner and I'm so awesome, and then what we're not seeing is the behind the scenes where the resentment builds and all the bullshit behind it. And you're right, there are options. We can do anything, we can go anywhere. If we have the tools, if we take advantage of the tools that are available to us to market our business. The nails thing was just an example. I can't forget about that. It's just an example of, sometimes we get too kind of high level in discussions about social and digital. And sometimes people think it's like so confusing or so impossible. I don't get it. I don't know what to do. I can't connect the dots. The nail thing is just a great example. It just happened yesterday. I was at the nail salon getting my matte black gel manicure, which I fucking am obsessed with. And to the left of me and to the right of me are two younger people with Instagram open on their phones with the nail image, going through the nail image with the nail tech. This is something I have been seeing for years, really, years, no matter where I've been in the country, whether it's LA or Portland or anywhere in between, is literally there are pictures on the internet. It could be Pinterest, it could be Instagram, that people are bringing to. It could be for nails. It could be for tattoos. It could be for hair color. It could be for buzz cuts. It could be for piercings. It could be for anything. That's literally how it works. Like, that's how it works, And so I just love seeing that, because it's almost like affirming for me to say, like, yeah, like, this is the real deal. This shit actually works, even though I know it works, obviously. But I was just, anyway, so that was the nail thing. And it really speaks to what you were saying, that building this decade has been a decade of newfound respect for creatives. There's no question about it. And like you said, because this work's being featured on the internet, and that goes for tattoo artists, piercers, nail artists, color, the whole barbers, all of it. I just fucking love it. Love it. Okay. Nails. Okay. I'm going to ask you to keep going.
Oh, so next for me, I'm staying really kind of broad, because I think the trends that we've experienced have been so broad. The evolution of content.
Oh my God. I've got that on my list too.
Think back 10 years ago. Think back when we started Passion Squared. What were we talking about? Blog posts and webinars.
And email. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's on my list too, is the advances in content creation, the apps, the tools. Remember when, because you and I were both, and still are, very quote obsessed. Yes. There was like one online quote maker, and I wish I could remember the name of it. But remember, we used to use it.
We used it all the time. Yes, it had like
it wasn't even an app. There
It
was
had 6 little things. Like I
yes,
remember,
yes,
because I used to use a typewriter one. There was a typewriter
yeah,
one, and there was
yes,
yes. It was
shit.
before Canva. In the
Oh my
beginning,
God, way before
Canva was
Canva.
much more
Yeah,
sophisticated. Oh
way before
man,
Canva.
I can't
But
remember.
literally there were no apps. There was no
Yep,
nothing yet.
yep.
And so there was this .com that we used to make
Yeah.
content. Oh, that's so funny. I
And
love
and that's it's important to say here that this evolution of content kind of parallels, I would think, this ramp up of general adoption, especially in the business space, because you and I, we were willing to do the work and figure.
that.
Actually, you were much better at figuring out stuff than me when it came to the apps and how to use them and find them and all that. But we were willing to do things that most people in business were just not quite ready for. And it wasn't,
Yeah.
I think, until it became easier, until we saw this evolution of social, to we saw the content categories, stories, and we saw what happened with video and the iPhone. Oh my gosh, we could do a whole podcast just on the
Well, I
evolution of
mean, the
content.
iPhone 4 didn't come out till 2010.
Uh-huh.
So you think of the app revolution. And
Oh.
you're talking about this with content creation. You think about all the tools. We can edit video, we can
Mhm.
make video, we can make graphics,
We can repost.
we can repost, we can do so many things, and
Mhm.
and a lot of that is thanks to, of course, I'm always gonna thank Apple.
Yes,
Thanks,
yes.
Apple.
But
But
even but
yeah.
even creatives are even figuring out how to go to one platform, steal the tools, create the content, go to TikTok, create a cool little video that maybe never gets posted, bring it over to Instagram and
Yeah.
do it. Or the same with Snapchat and what we saw people doing in the early times of filters.
Oh, filters.
Yes, filters. The good, the bad, and the
Filters.
ugly of filters. That's always a
Well,
controversial
of
conversation.
course it is, because obviously it creates,
It's a
there's some
silly. It's a by the
psychological
way.
issues
By the
around
way,
that.
it's a silly conversation. I'll just say it. It's a silly conversation. Everybody get over filters.
Well,
So,
I think yes, until we're talking about mental health.
oh yeah, yeah.
You
I'm
know what
talking
I
about the
mean?
way an image looks. I'm talking
Yeah,
about the use
no,
of
of
filters
course I have
because
to go
that's
back to mental
yeah, yeah.
health. I always have to go
As
back to
as
mental
we all need to from time to time. So it's a good thing.
But yeah, I mean, you're right. The advances of content creation. Um, I mean, I was also thinking okay, so we started doing webinars in
Yes.
2012,
Yep.
right? And we started doing webinars in 2012, and we used a platform that was
Oh.
horrendously difficult, and I think
Some people are still using it and it's still difficult.
it's the word. I'm not going to name it because that's
No.
not nice or fair, or it doesn't matter. I mean, we use at Passion Square, we use Zoom now, and Zoom is just like, shout out to Zoom, not
Hmm.
sponsoring this podcast. Um, but it's just so user friendly and so intuitive, and the awesome client journey and all that stuff, and it's wonderful. And, you remember how hard it was for us to
Oh,
just do a fucking webinar? Oh my
I was on a webinar recently, a more private webinar with a brand. The brand was conducting the webinar, and I was a guest on it. And um, it took 30 minutes to figure out that they couldn't figure out how to load the PowerPoint to do the webinar. And it was that same platform that we used 10 years ago,
Oh
and
God,
a lot of big companies
it's
are
the
still using this
worst.
stuff. So yeah, we need to pay attention to the evolution, and we need to stay in touch with what's happening all around us because these tools are evolving so quickly. And if we're frustrated with anything about what we're doing online, there's probably either something better, or something better coming, or some sort of cheat in a good way to get us to a better place.
Well, I mean, that's why we always have to be looking at that client journey, and it's same with booking platforms. There's, obviously there's some great salon software companies out there that have been around for decades, yet some have not been able to create, or keep up with the technology of basic booking or text confirmation in a seamless way. Payments. I mean, payments. Who thought
Yeah.
we'd be paying for shit on our phone?
And some of us, like if we're asked to pay some other way, we're frustrated. Like we want to pay, we want it to be easy.
Like, not only do we not want to deal with cash, we don't
Hmm.
even want to pull a card out anymore
No,
because we have our wallet on our
exactly.
phone.
Hmm.
So again, looking at that client journey and in app booking, you can book on Instagram, you can book
And
your
here's what
appointments on
we
Instagram. There's so many things. I'm all over the place, but I'm so excited.
and no, and something else for us to consider too, are the bigger global trends. In the States, we're kind of behind on this. You look at what's happening in Asia with payment systems and how like everything is on the phone. I mean, it's just all in there in ways that we can't even begin to imagine until we see it. In Europe, it's much more sophisticated. We're, in many ways, we're a little behind over here still.
Wait, weren't you at Disney? Didn't you go to Disney in Japan?
Yes, I did in Tokyo.
In Tokyo, and didn't you say that it was really sophisticated, like the way that you navigated the park and everything?
Everything, the way we navigated the park, the way we bought our tickets, I mean, it was just a different level than what we're used to here. And it wasn't like crazy sci-fi. It was just more seamless and more efficient. And we had ways to unlock what we were doing in Disney, walking around the park and in way. I haven't been to Disney in the States in a while, but coming back and talking to friends, they were like, "Oh, we're not quite that cool yet." So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Oh my
I
gosh.
want to I want to talk about, like the categories, because that's another evolution. Podcasts. What the heck? Podcasts.
Podcasts.
They've been around for 20 years, but it's really been
Yeah.
the last 5 or so that they've like skyrocketed and
Why do you
all
think
kinds
that
of platforms.
is?
I think, well, I don't know, but in reading about, the trend and what the thought leaders in the space believe, so there's something about this kind of personal experience that seems to happen between the audience member and what they're hearing, and this feeling of connectivity that's a little different than other content forms. And I think it's a smart content form that some parts of audiences are in search of, and I think it's just delivered something in a really unique and special way.
I would agree with that. I also think there's a convenience to it. Like
Hmm.
we can actually like do our laundry listening to a podcast or drive down the road or two things I
It's
don't do that much of. No, we could, you know what I mean? We could exercise. We could just wake up and have our coffee. I think that the actual way it's being consumed, because our eyeballs are almost fatigued at the
hmm
scroll, the scroll, and it's like almost numbing the scroll. And so I feel like this is just it's a smart experience. It's a in many ways a soothing experience. It's funny. Do you remember? I'm doing all the do you remembers. Remember when I used to do audio blogs on Passion Squared
Yes,
every
totally.
fucking morning?
Yep.
And I stopped doing that at some point. I don't know if it was
Hmm.
2013 or 2014. I had done some sort of survey and I'm like, do you enjoy consuming the blog via audio? And I didn't get a good response and I just dropped
hmm
it. And it's crazy because it was kind of like a podcast.
It was, but it
It was
wasn't.
story
It
time.
it wasn't. It also wasn't typical. So I think it was so nichey at that moment that people were like not sure how to react to it. Although all of it reminds me of what so many of our friends over time have been really successful with in the old school way, which was, all those business audio programs, the cassette tapes, the
Absolute
DVDs,
cassette.
the CDs from
Bring back the cassette tape.
Robert Cromies and Gino Stampora and Win Clavar and our friend Michael
Yes.
Cole. They all had these. And now, such a great example.
Audio experiences.
I just did a podcast with Win a few weeks ago, at Hairbrain Conversations. And, he's launched a podcast. And I'll take a little bit of credit because I've been encouraging him for a year to do it. But he took his master's audio program, which is 25 years, around,
Mhm.
starting as I think cassette tapes and then moving into
Yeah,
CDs
there
and
was cassette
DVDs.
tape.
And now it's a podcast.
Fucking
And,
awesome.
he recognized that, look, people aren't using CDs or DVDs very much anymore, if at all. And I do think that the audio learner has always been here. And I think that with the kind of DVDs and CDs falling apart, there was like a gap. Like we didn't have that resource anymore. I'm an audio learner. I would
Mm.
much prefer to listen and than any other type of, I listen and I write, I don't have to watch as much.
Huh.
So there's a bunch of us out there and
I
clearly
love that.
It's resonated.
Content versus context.
Ooh.
Right? Because going
Mm-hmm.
back to I used to record audios every morning. So I had content, but it was out of context. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the context of a podcast. It wasn't uploaded on podcast platforms. It wasn't, and you can look at that as the cassette, or the example of Win moving masters
Mm-hmm.
onto a podcast. It's so important to remember this content versus context, because we can have video, but it's all the context of presenting that video, the platform that video is presented on, the format, all of that. So I love that. I love that.
Well, that's it. But I want to add the context of and you've brought this up in different ways, but the consumer experience and the consumer expectation. Podcasts, when, I launched the American Salon podcast, like maybe, I don't know, 4.5 years ago now.
Yeah.
And then Hairbrain Conversations, 2.5 years ago. And the crowd was on the podcast platform. Studies show that over a third of Americans have listened to a podcast. And so we are on platforms where we know there is a quote unquote community versus what we were doing at Passion Squared back in the day. And that community for audio wasn't quite there yet. So that's kind of fascinating.
You're absolutely right. And speaking of 1/3 of Americans have listened to a podcast, this may be in your predictions, but I mean, doesn't everyone have a podcast now?
Oh, there's over 1 million podcasters.
1 million podcasters.
Yeah. But remember, I think we have a good comparative for this, and that's the YouTubers. Because you and I've been obsessed with YouTube for a long time. I was extremely obsessed, especially in the early days, from a business perspective and what was happening over there. And oh my gosh, it's like everybody and their brother set out to be a YouTuber. Kind of reminds me of the influencer thing in a different way. That, we saw these rising stars on YouTube. It was a whole new content category. It was easy to get to, and boom, everybody wants to be a YouTuber. Today, everybody wants to be an influencer and or a podcaster. And by the way, now we've got influencers with podcasts.
Yes. Which is awesome. And also, just like anything, it gets noisy. And when things get noisy, they either get niched or they parlay it into something else, i.e. influencers. I was just reading a really interesting article about YouTubers because, YouTube struggled a lot with their content creators and those relationships and, the monetization. And for anyone that stays up on YouTube, it's been pretty nasty the last few years. And I don't remember the actual content creator, but they were saying that they went from like $250,000 a month to $2,000 a month based on all of the changes and the what Taylor Lorenz over at New York Times called the ad apocalypse over on YouTube. And what was interesting, though, is that what I was reading was that, and this is very much the same as influencers, like you were just bringing up the influencer, podcaster. These YouTubers aren't generating revenue much anymore through the ads because they parlayed that into merch and brands and partnerships and stuff like that, just like we're seeing with the influencers.
And just like we saw in music before. Yeah. I mean, it hit the music industry first, right? I mean, we saw bands having to move to a live touring merchandise business model, especially if they weren't at the highest of levels, that middle and lower level, and which was a big change. And it was brought about by the Spotifys and the Pandoras and the Napsters.
Napster! Really
Google
taking it back.
Google Napster if you don't know what it is.
Oh my God. Napster.
Can we talk about online learning as a content category?
Yes.
I mean, oh my gosh.
Let's do it.
Wow. I mean, talk about, again, another shift, because I think, again, YouTube is such a great place to start because so much of what evolved on YouTube was forms of education, ways for us to learn. It's starting with the simple act of, how the heck do I work my iPhone? I'm going to YouTube.
I still go to YouTube to clean to do the cleaning function on my espresso machine Their name
Uh-huh.
is Joy, by the way. The espresso machine's name is Joy, and I go to YouTube for that. Yeah.
But again, we've seen this, shift and I guess growth in categories of content on YouTube, but also now the evolution of free and paid platforms. And I'll talk about kind of how we look at it at Hairbrain. So you've got the YouTube stuff that Hairbrain was involved in early. Then, Hairbrain launched Facebook Lives. It's done over 600 of them. What a great platform for learning. Facebook Lives, you do
600
Facebook Lives,
Facebook
as a way to
Lives? Wow.
600 Facebook Lives from Hairbrain. They're all on the Hairbrain Facebook page. And out of that then came an interest in deeper learning. So we launched an online learning platform, hblive.me, but that's paid education as well as some free education. But I think big picture, what's exciting for me is, as kind of a numbers geek, I know that all the research shows us, and we know it anecdotally, the majority of hairdressers don't get to live education on a regular basis. They don't perhaps live near it. It's not easy to be able to afford to get to it. It doesn't come to them. I believe, digital education, whether it's the simple old school YouTube stuff or the more sophisticated online learning platforms that are available throughout the industry, that's opening doors to a huge part of the industry that never had access.
Yeah. You're so right. I love that. I love that. I love the access and access. That's such a great word. And it could be access to tools. It could be access to online learning. It could be access to relationships, access to mentors, access to being your own business, and being an entrepreneur. It is that is one of the greatest highlights. I'm so glad you brought that up. And online learning, of course, is what we started doing in the beginning at
Yes,
Passion
we
Squared.
did.
We did free webinars, and then in 2015, January of 2015, we launched A School, our salon owner coaching program. I can't believe that was 2015. We're going to be celebrating 5 years.
That's crazy.
Next week. I know.
And
5 fucking years.
And that's you. We mentioned that we started together. We had our, what you always refer to as our conscious uncoupling.
Our conscious uncoupling in 2013.
And then you've gone on to do amazing, amazing work with Passion Squared, and including A School and S School and all that you've got going on.
Well, and we also started doing our daily texting in 2015.
I get it every morning. I do. I love it. I love it. It's inspiring as all get out. It's a great way to start the day. I have some more little bullets. Can I mention?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Because this is going to be the longest podcast in history.
I love it.
I know. Me too.
Well, I'm going to throw in a fun one. I have more on my list that's less fun, but again, it goes to this globalization of everything. It's just amazing. But as you know, and I looked back in 2012, so it fits our decades, I discovered K-pop.
Oh my God. You sure did. And not many people
K-pop.
know that about you, Gordon Miller.
No, well, I think a lot probably do today, or maybe have heard little bits of it, but for a long time they didn't. Some of our closest friends did in 2012, and I'll say it the way he kind of would say it. I can't do it, but one of my favorites, he's like G-Dragon baby, and G-Dragon is one of the biggest stars in Korea, has been for a long time, and that was my introduction. But K-pop as a trend, talking about globalization of what happens online, YouTube, social, people do know about a band called BTS, and they just took off the last couple of years. I was introduced to I checked back as well on my Spotify account, BTS like almost 7 or 8 years ago. So they've been around for a while. But I'm just fascinated again culturally with the doors that have been opened for all of us, and how many of and I'll use the barbers as a great example. How many of our barber friends do we see now going to Japan, going to Europe, traveling the world? I've known barbers my whole professional life. Nobody went anywhere. They're traveling the globe, and they're killing it.
They are. It's so inspiring.
And meeting one another. And I got to meet, the Brothers Cut Club, Mr. Potato Head and Juliet, and the guys from Japan who were at BarberCon last year, and would have never happened without this revolution of online and social.
So cool. That's so cool. That's amazing. Any other highlights of the decade?
Well, there is Amazon, and it was the evolution of, but
Da,
certainly
da,
the
da.
I think, and I think the launch of professional product sales on Amazon, I think that is a huge milestone in the industry's, timeline, and in this last decade's, timeline of milestones. Amazon.
Amazon's a big one. And we need to, I want to talk about that because it really goes back to awesome client journey and being where your
Mhm.
clients are and adapting and business models and all of that. And while I am officially 10 years out of the manufacturer side of the professional beauty industry, I still pay attention. Obviously, I pay a lot of attention to business models because it's what I do in helping
Mhm.
salons. And retail, that's a whole nother podcast. We go on and on and on. But the bottom line is here we are, right? This
Mhm.
happened. It's done. It happened. It already happened. So
And almost all of us like to buy stuff online. We need to look at ourselves when we start this conversation about Amazon. I think is step one. It's like, do you buy anything on Amazon? It might help explain why others do.
yeah, and again, you can hate Amazon. We're not this is not an ad for Amazon. There are a lot of things
No.
they can do
Oh my
better
gosh. No.
and a lot of horrible things they're doing. However,
Yep.
one of the things that it is in actually kind of my predictions, but also something that's been on the rise and an opportunity I see to support local. If you want to continue to do that, if you want your clients to come to you, is this Prime. Okay, we have Prime Now, right? We have Prime Now that is 2 hours, and um, we have grocery pickup. We can place the order and go do curbside pickup. We can do in-store pickup, and I've been reading that that's going to become even like more popular because
Mm-hmm.
we're so fucking impatient.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've really thought a lot about it. And it's like salons could do that if they wanted to. They could
Of course they could.
absolutely, because if it's not, I don't want to wait 2 days. I don't want to wait 2 hours. But can I do a drive by and pick up my shampoo? Because I literally ran out this morning. And if the answer is yes, that would be fucking rad.
So can I think I texted this to you the other day. So this is my big idea for brands. Pay attention, brands. This one's for free.
Listen to Gordon Miller.
So
I don't know if
when
brand. I don't
when
know if brands listen to this, Gordon.
when I don't know, but
I don't think so.
I'm waiting for a big brand to go cut a deal with Postmates, a national delivery service,
Do it.
big national brand that says we have this many thousands of salons who buy our product, and our customers, our salon customers who are selling retail, we want a special deal with them through Postmates, a discounted price, so Postmates will come pick up the product and deliver it to Gordon at his house when he wants it, so we don't lose the retail sale.
And who did
Uh,
they just partner with?
Postmates.
Right. And who did they just partner with?
Oh, who did Postmates? I don't even know. Who did they
Wait,
post? Who did
for delivery. For delivery. Remember
remind me?
we were talking about Old Navy?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Go ahead. Explain it. I'm sorry.
Okay, so well, no, I mean this is kind of the thing is these whether it's Postmates or Uber or
Mhm.
Grubhub, there's Caviar, there's DoorDash.
Yep.
They who did Old Navy partner with? They just started this. Old
I don't
Navy.
remember.
I have
And
to
I
Google. It just happened.
and
Old
it feels
Navy
like there's an evolution
delivery.
in the delivery space. There's a lot of talks that Grubhub is
A
not going to
lot.
make it.
A
That
lot.
there's going to be consolidation.
Yeah, no, a lot. I just know that somebody, I don't remember which one it was.
But
Anyways.
the big point is where you started. I mean, customer experience. And as a customer, I have expectations around experience. We live busier lives than ever. I'm not driving across town back to the salon where I get my haircut to buy a bottle of shampoo when I need it.
Well, it's actually Postmates just started delivering
Ah,
Old Navy merch. I agree with you. I agree with you, but I also believe that for those people that are out and about that do want to go grab their stuff should also be able to do that.
yes,
Just like grocery, just like
yes,
Home
yes.
Depot, just like I mean it's everywhere, right? So it's just something to keep in mind. It's something to look at. There's always opportunities. There's always options. There's always different ways to look at the business model. So that's definitely
And And a great way to find out what those opportunities are is to talk to your clients about this stuff.
yes. and listen. And listen to what
Yes.
they're talking about. I mean, that's another thing that's so great in the last decade is, before the internet, we had no idea what the fuck people were talking about. Now
Hmm.
we have an overload of what people are talking about.
And
However,
people are talking about shit they shouldn't be talking about. I'm going to say
well, that's different. That's
it.
different. But social listening is a thing. And
Yes.
when we think about the amount of time we invest on social as a business, a big part of that time is simply social listening, paying attention to what's going on. What are clients talking about? Where are they going? Where are they shopping? What are they wearing? What are they eating? So I love that. Okay. Um, can we go into, God, there's so many things that happen in this decade. One of the things that,
I
go ahead.
no, you go. You go.
Well, one of the things that ended the decade, which is a big fucking deal with lots of implications, is the end of the Instagram like.
Oh yeah, and not everybody knows about that because not everybody's experienced it. Like I have a lot of friends who are saying to me, "Are you crazy? I still can see them. I cannot. You cannot." And so we know they're continuing to roll that out. I think soon none of us are going to see the likes.
I love that. I love that. I love that because then I believe that we'll get back to what matters and
Mm.
why the social web can be so empowering for small business, which is building relationships and adding value and solving problems and listening and all the things.
Well, and so I'm going to add another little milestone that connects to that on the other, kind of on the flip side, which is the negativity that is can be on these platforms right now. And a milestone for me was 2 years ago on a personal level, I left Facebook. So my profile is still there. I've
Oh,
not posted. I posted maybe 3 pieces of content in 2 years, and I left personally, not professionally. So I'm on there every day for Hairbrained, and we have a very active presence. But personally, I found it not to be as fulfilling as Instagram for me. I didn't like a lot of what was happening over there. We know it's become the number one source for news for the majority of Americans. And as a news geek, I found too much of the information to be dicey.
fake.
Yeah, a lot of
I
fake
mean,
news.
talk about a milestone in the decade.
Yeah, yeah,
Fake news,
yep, yep. So
foreign interference in an election,
oh boy, don't
Facebook
care.
being the
That's
set, Facebook being the center of that.
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
mean, loss of trust
Mm-hmm.
in platforms, Facebook
Hmm.
particularly, right?
Yep,
The
yep,
rise of bots.
yep.
There was a bot that got a trending topic on Twitter this morning.
There
This
was,
morning.
I saw a
It's
study
disturbing.
last week that it does not seem to be fake news. It was from a very reputable, middle of the road source that was talking about some of the biggest names on Twitter and the percentage of followers who were bots. And
Hmm.
without getting into any names, there was like one big politician who almost a third of all of his many, many millions of followers
Yeah.
were bots.
And it's happening. I mean, even though Instagram's done really well with their bots, they're still struggling. The bots
Yep.
have now come to Insta stories because there's been a rise in bots answering questions on Insta stories.
Hmm.
Automated services are still emailing people saying, use our service. We can help you get likes and followers and engagement. I mean, it's big. I mean, that could be again a whole
and
nother
bot and
podcast.
bots and
Jesus.
bots are kind of like they remind me of witches and Dorothy because I'll have my gay moment here, but it's kind of like are you a good bot, are you a bad bot, are you a good witch or are
All
you a
bad.
bad
All
witch,
the bots are bad. Witches are rad. Bots are bad. Oh, that rhymes. That I just made a
there you
little.
go.
I just made a
I,
little rhyme.
I love it.
I think that we also are closing out this decade, which is actually inspiring, with social media fatigue.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I think that's positive. I think it speaks, and speaking to the likes thing, I think that people are finally having a wake up call around their mental wellness,
Mm.
their obsession with perfectionism and comparison, and perspective, and realizing that this is not all it's cracked up to be, and I'm going to actually partake in this and be grateful for this and use this tool to make things better, not make myself feel worse.
And independent of that, there's the time management thing, because for a lot of people it isn't even a matter of feeling one way or the other. It's just a giant distraction. And I remember back in the early days of Facebook, before social was as big as it is today, working in a corporate office, and one of the never-ending conversation was, what are people doing on their computers? Are they doing their work, or are they doing Facebook? So and this was early Facebook, before it was overly commercialized and all of that. And I think, social, we've seen studies, that we know that the way that these platforms are designed, that they take advantage of some of the psychological aspects of being human. Dopamine, it's been proven, just like slot machines in Vegas.
Yep.
And so we know that there's some kind of addictive behaviors around this stuff, that it may not make you unhappy, but it certainly can make you inefficient and ineffective in your work and in your life.
And I think that, Instagram most definitely has taken the lead on creating tools and talking about mental health and talking about bullying and Instagram's done a good job. Can't say the same for Facebook or Twitter. But we'll see on TikTok. So, oh my gosh, all the things. Okay, let's how about you personally? What are you most proud of this decade before we get into predictions? Like,
oh, what am I most proud of?
highlights.
This will sound crazy, but one of my biggest highlights was I actually took a 2-week vacation this year, and
Yay!
that's the most amount of time I've taken off during the decade. So
Wow.
I made a commitment that I was going to do that this year, and I was going to do something on my bucket list, which was to go to Japan. And that was a milestone for me, not just because I went to Japan, not just because I took a 2-week vacation, but I took a step back and said, I need to start finding a little bit of balance in my very happy, unbalanced life. And I'm very kind of happy in the way my life is generally, but we all need to recharge every often. So that was a milestone for me, a very big one. Moving into media was a huge milestone for me, going
Yes.
from the consulting space and a very long career in education and other parts of the industry. And then 5 or so years ago, almost 6+ years ago, becoming publisher of American Salon. And then watching the evolution of media, making the decision that I wanted to not be in that space anymore. And then the surprise opportunity of joining Hairbrained 2.5 years ago. And it's just been one of the great joys of my professional career.
And you've done such an awesome fucking job.
Well,
Like,
the team, I'm so proud of everybody. Gerard and Randy, started this amazing platform,
yep.
and Kelly, and now we've got Courtney Bright, who came with
Yes.
me, after leaving American as well, and we've got Justine Berger, who came to us from the events and
Yeah.
managing and working with artist side and with a long career at L'Oreal. So we're killing it, we're loving it, we're
Such an
having a good
awesome
time,
team.
and one of my bigger milestones. How about you?
I love that. Well, shit, we both left our lifetime careers
Yep.
in the past decade.
Because of
So,
social and digital,
because
in
of
part.
social, well, yeah, in part. And, and not young and doing it when people
Yeah.
don't typically leave, right? Their careers. I'm proud of a lot of things. The fact that Passion Squared not only was launched, but has been able to help empower so many
Mhm.
awesome, kind, wise, compassionate leaders in the beauty industry is something I'm incredibly proud of. I'm incredibly proud of our community and clients of Passion Squared. Watching people grow it is my greatest joy, and
Mhm.
something that it makes me proud every fucking day. So you know who you are, everyone. Shout out to all of you. I'm so proud of you. I wrote 2 books in this decade.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my
So my
gosh.
first book in 2013, Follow Your Heart, and then I just released my latest book, called My Awesome as Fuck Boundary Book, and I just introduced that in 2019. Um, I also left everything that I ever known in my life
Hmm.
in Los Angeles and moved to magical fucking Oregon. And so
That's
that was
good.
huge. I'm proud of myself for finally saying yes to a dream I had had for almost 10 years and also surviving thus far because it has not been easy. So I'm really proud of that. Okay, let's talk about the future. Let's talk about predictions. So 2020, like holy shit, right? Can you
Yeah.
believe it?
Well, and one thing we're going to do, and you're going to be a part of it in 2020, is an event called FutureCast in
Oh my
Chicago.
God. Speaking of podcasts,
And speaking of the future of the professional beauty industry, so we're going to do an event, Hairbrained, in Chicago, March 30th. It's a full day event with some evening stuff the night before.
yes.
But 5 podcasters, including you, including our friend Eric Taylor,
Yes.
Katie Whitridge, the hair industry guys, Hairbrain Conversations. Am I forgetting? That's everybody. And we'll help to host this event and facilitate panels on
So
stage to talk
stoked.
about where the industry is going in the next 5 to 10 years. And most
Future
excited,
cast.
FutureCast. And the website's hbfuturecast.com. And that, so, but let's talk about the future. 2020, here's my thing about the past, the present, and the future. We're kind of like on this giant beauty industry glacier. It moves slowly, and we don't see fast, giant evolution, but I think that's reflective of the world around us. And we tend to be a little bit behind the curve, which isn't always bad. We're not the early adopters. We're more we have this tendency more to look at what's happening around us, and as innovation comes our way, we pick and choose. But so I don't expect like massive shifts in the near term, but everything we've talked about, so far, the shifts in business models are going to continue to evolve. The shifts in all the platforms and who's on different platforms. I believe the biggest challenge that we have going forward as an industry is how we deal with these multiple generations. We've got now 3 and 4 generations in one salon, and whether they are employees, working with management and leadership, or whether they are renters who have neighbors of a different generation, or suite owners who are talking through the wall to their different all this is a challenge in some way for many of us.
Interesting. And I feel I would agree with you. And I feel that the solution's really simple. It's just whether you're open to I'm going to go back to Stephen Covey, seek first to understand.
7 habits of highly effective people.
Right. Seek first to understand. It is purely a choice,
Mm-hmm.
to not understand, to project biases, to lack empathy, to just not give a fuck, because it's not hard to understand behaviors of a generation. It's not hard to understand and learn about them. It's being open to doing so and being mindful of what you're projecting onto that generation. A good example is my generation, the Gen X's. We were workaholic, materialistic, fucking, whatevers. Whereas millennials and Zs in particular are so purpose driven and so social justice driven. And it's like, what's wrong with that? Like, how can you, just because I didn't get to be that person, just because I wasn't purpose driven, just because I was a workaholic and paid the price for being a workaholic, why would I project my resentment of my experience onto a future generation that knows better and does better and finds more value in things outside of work? I think it's fucking awesome. So I love yes, 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 and yes.
And that these especially the newest professionals coming into the industry, they are coming into an industry that looks today very different than the industry that you and I walked into. And I think, again, that's some of the generational challenges that anybody faces in managing the younger folks coming in, leading the younger folks coming in, because it doesn't look and feel the same
It
as an
doesn't.
industry.
You're right. And I've seen so many awesome boomer and Gen X leaders who do embrace the differences, who do have a commitment to understanding and learning about generations, having a renaissance in their leadership experience and in their businesses because they are. And
Yep.
that to me is so inspiring. I just had an opportunity to chat with some future professionals at Paul Matilda School Portland's
Mm-hmm.
in my neighborhood. And, as much as everything's changed, the world's changed as much as generations have changed. What I can tell you in my experience over the last 30 years and in my experience in the last couple months after being face to face with these kids is a lot of the issues are the same. The difference is they have obviously heightened anxiety. They are, 9/11. They are coming from school shootings. They are digital natives. They are, there's so many layers, but that core hairdresser heart, those genetics are the same, and they're sweet and precious and passionate and excited. And as leaders, we have a responsibility to nurture and hold and grow and love these people. So
and to share the very simple, straightforward best practices that the entire industry was built on, which is fundamental marketing, which is asking for referrals, which is rebooking your clients, which is making recommendations. 30 years ago it was true, 20 years ago, 10 years ago today, and 10 years from now it will be true. It's just that the tools we have to do these things are different. And the real challenge is, how do we teach this new generation who are different than generations before to take advantage of these simple best practices? I always say it's not a complicated industry. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's hard work, but it's not complicated.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Can we talk about, so here's a big thing for the future I just want to bring up. And my minor and my love in college was economics, and I love looking at all the big picture stuff and all the parts and pieces. And one of the big ideas in economics is market corrections. Mm-hmm. And I think we have some corrections coming. Mm-hmm.
I would agree.
And I think, we've seen bubbles.
Can you explain what that means, Gordon?
Yeah, in economics, sometimes consumers lose their mind, as one example, and get all excited about something. And we see kind of a not so rational movement of dollars towards something. The crazy Elmo craze, might be a good example of it. And soon to be Baby Yoda craze.
Baby Yoda made it on the podcast.
I can't wait to order mine.
Oh my God.
But there are these bubbles in economic activity, as an example. And so
a housing bubble?
Housing bubble is a great example. And then the market kind of settles and says, wait a minute, people were overpaying for something, or too many people moved in a certain direction. Demand went up unexpectedly, somewhat irrationally. The market always will find its way back to rational. It will always find its way back to something that's economically sensible. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at our industry, whether it's the shift in business models, which I believe there's a big correction coming there, I believe that rental has exploded, but that doesn't mean everyone who has been part of the explosion is necessarily capable of succeeding in that space. Suites have exploded. It's such a big topic of conversation. Those of us who study this stuff, that's a real estate kind of play within the industry. It's a good thing. It's cool. We've got some great friends on that side of the marketplace. Yeah. I believe there'll be a correction there as well as things begin to settle in. We've seen this great fear of commission salons collapsing. I think the fear is a little misplaced. I think as the correction happens in rental and people start to learn more about what's happening, I think we'll see some corrections there. And then there's a whole nother conversation on the service side. I don't know that we need to go there, but we've seen some bubbles there as well.
What about bubbles with independent education and influencers?
Oh my gosh. Oh, do we want to go there?
I don't know. Is that in your predictions?
It's scribbled on the paper. So, I've talked about the influencer one before. Mm-hmm. I think, again, it's like we talked about YouTubers early. We've had these rock star moments in the industry, and it's gotten everybody's attention. And there's been a lot of economic benefit put into that category. We've seen the media turned upside down in many ways. And I think a lot of it has been based on the bigger trend that's happening outside, but it hasn't been happening for enough time for brands and or the marketplace to know if it's going to be here for the long term. Mm. And so it feels like it's overdone a little bit. And so my prediction will be that we'll see a contraction in the influencer space. And I think that we will see some shifts in the dollars. And I think on the education side of the space, tremendous amount of education, and I think that will definitely shake out as well. It's a supply and demand issue. It's a question of who can hang in there, just like a small business that's opening. How long can you hang in there while you build your revenue to break even? And I think it's a lot harder as an independent.
Right. No, I definitely agree with that. What else do you have?
In the prediction category, I think one of the bigger predictions I would have is, again, we talked about this, shift towards this awareness, this, the massive consumers who are now actively involved in social. We know hairdressers that are there in big ways, but we are very frustrated because we don't see them using it effectively to drive their careers forward and their business forward. And I think two things are going to happen. I think there's going to be definitely further adoption, further learning where people get in there and use it right. But I think we're going to see a lot of professionals fall out of social. I think we're going to see a lot of people give up on it. I've said this before on the Hairbrain Conversations podcast. When I travel to a city, I'll often, as the plane's coming in, I'll start going into Yelp and looking at salons and then looking at Instagram. It's really hard in most markets to find very many salons who are doing this stuff well.
That's frustrating, and I agree with you. And I'm so glad that I'm never going to give up on trying to help salons see value in using the tools.
We've been at it for a long time, and again, as you said earlier, we did it for several years when people thought we were crazy. But again, I think, we both believed in this stuff so much, and we had so many examples of great work being done, success, beginning to be built, and we've stuck with it and we're going to stick with it. Because it's changed the world, and it's only right that it changes our industry as well.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. And, one of my predictions actually, and it's not necessarily a 2020, but in the coming decade, it's hard to pinpoint an actual year, but for as much as you said, people not using the tools still and giving up on them, I also see that businesses, salons / businesses will be built around them. Digitally savvy, social savvy, all built in, content studios, the whole nine. So it's for as many people that may abandon it altogether, I think that if you're opening a new business, if you're doing a build out today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, it's just going to be inherent within the model. And I mean, there's many ways that could actually be expressed, but it's kind of like the Apple Store, you know what I mean? In terms of how revolutionary that was when it launched.
And, it's such a great example because to me, the Apple Store is a destination. I rarely buy anything there, but I get there every couple of months just to go be in it. It's that good of an experience. It's that great of an opportunity. I always sit down and watch the class that they're teaching, even if it's just for 10 minutes. That was a game changer for the retail model. And I completely agree with you. I have on my list, I wrote down watch China. And this is very big picture. But everything I've read, everything I've seen, I was recently at a PBA executive summit. It's crazy what's happening over there. They're so, in many ways, advanced beyond where we are today in their use of social at the consumer level, at the shopping level, at the purchasing level, the ambassadors / influencers, what they're doing with live streams. It is so far and away ahead of us. It's a little bit scary, but it's coming our way.
Well, and since you brought up China, as we know, TikTok, blew up after purchasing Musical.ly, and then the government found out it was owned by a Chinese company. So let me just ask you, obviously none of us have control over if the government steps in. Of course, we don't know. But what do you think is the impact or the potential impact? Of course, all the social media people are like, don't sleep on TikTok or whatever. It's like, we've heard this a million times before. What do you think? What do you think is the future of TikTok?
I think kind of two sides to the coin. One is it's China, and China, is becoming probably the most important economic force in the world. They're beginning to kind of overtake us that way, according to a lot of the research. But they're certainly, significant. They're very patient, and they're going to make it work, I believe. Having said that, I also can't. The other side of the coin for me is Snapchat. We saw all the excitement about Snapchat, and we saw Facebook and Instagram come in and just basically borrow their ideas and make them fit onto the Instagram platform and then the Facebook platform by way of stories and what they were doing with filters and things, and kind of, did a number on Snapchat. And I believe, having listened to some of the Zuckerberg stuff, that Instagram and Facebook are going to take the best of TikTok and implement it into those platforms. And then it will be interesting to see whether TikTok will still have the same impact. Of course, there's a lot of concern that the analysts have about age. So we know that there's younger people on it, and they may stay with it. TikTok will more than likely evolve as a platform as their community ages. Yeah. And so it's going to be hard to say.
Well, I mean, look at how
my money's on Instagram.
Look at how quickly the beauty industry abandoned Snapchat. I mean, gosh. Like instantly, right? When stories launched, when Insta stories
Well, it took about 2 weeks. Everybody jumped over there, but it was kind of funny because I was one of those people who was like, I don't think so. Yeah. And I feel the same way about TikTok because the economic and just the sheer might of Facebook and Instagram as one company, pretty tough. And I think they're really smart.
I'm kind of, because my Libra's coming out here. I'm kind of in the middle. Shocking. Because we also don't know what the government's going to do to Facebook. And so,
break them up, I hope.
Break them up. I mean, the hope is that they'll be broken up. But if there's Facebook could fuck Instagram. Like, they could really hurt. Like, I'm talking about much bigger picture, if something horrific was to happen. And then, TikTok's sitting over there waiting. That's a possibility. The other thing that's interesting about TikTok is that it literally skews so fucking young. Because where Facebook and Instagram
is entertainment. It's entertainment. Yeah. It's a different form of content.
But it can also be educational. There's a lot of great things. I love TikTok, by the way. This is not a TikTok hating conversation at all. No. But I have a cousin who's just turned 18, and I'm like, so TikTok? And they're like, oh my God, no, it's all kids. Yeah. And that's an 18-year-old saying, ew, it's all kids. So, I think, again, just like with anything, rushing to a platform, learning about the platform, yes, none of us know what's going to happen. It's certainly awesome. It's entertaining. It's fun. Like you said earlier, it's a content creation tool that can be taken over to Instagram or anywhere else. There's so many great things about it. But let's remember, Vine blew up and, crashed and burned pretty quickly. So we don't know, right? We really don't know.
We have no idea. And I think YouTube's going to come back, in a big way. And they haven't gone away. Like you said, there's been a lot of controversy. A lot of their, leading creators have been frustrated because of the economics of it.
They're still there making content.
It's massive. Yeah. I mean, it's a massive platform. And I think it's one of the missed opportunities that's going to swing back our direction.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I just really feel like, some of the greatest growth that will come in the next few years, in particular to the salon industry, the prediction is if you fucking tap into the tools, you're going to be stoked. Because whether it's, a good example is Instagram's had video chat forever in stories.
Yes.
How many people are using that video chat to do consultations? So many people say, I don't do online booking because I do complicated services. I do color. I do whatever. Okay, then slide in the DMs and jump on video chat and do video chat consultations. Like, the tools are there. So yeah, that's a
and it's funny. I was talking to our friend Chad Kenyon, colorist from LA, celebrity colorist, brilliant, and he does Facebook Live consultations. For first-time clients, private Facebook Lives, very similar idea, where he does a full consultation with that client, before they ever even come into the salon, which he says has added tremendous efficiencies to his day.
I love that. One prediction that I'm going to make, and it's mostly because I am all about hope and all about where intention goes, energy flows. I want salons to, I'm going to predict that salons are going to be part of leading the way to breaking the binary and creating gender affirming spaces by getting rid of gendered services and gendered pricing. And thank you to the Dress Code Project for leading the way in that movement. I mean, come on.
It's
It's
been a
like
30 year conversation. So I'll be fascinated to see, because of social, whether it can finally happen.
I just
But
put that out there.
my entire career, we've talked about,
Ugh,
why is it this way?
come on, people.
But we've had the same problem, similar conversation about, the cost of men's versus women's clothing.
Oh, it's all gendered. Yeah.
Crazy,
Fuck it
crazy,
all.
crazy,
Yeah.
crazy,
It's
crazy
ridiculous.
stuff.
It's so old. It's does not need to come into the 20s. It does not need to follow us to the 20s. Come on, people. Anything else before we wrap up? Literally the longest podcast episode in the history of the People, Passion, Purpose podcast. And of course, no better person to do it with than Gordon Miller.
Oh, thank you. I scribbled in the corner here because I'm a scribbler. I make notes for anything I'm
I'm a
going to talk about.
doodler and you're a scribbler.
I'm a scribbler, and it says in the corner, I wake up excited every day, and that must be under my bench. That must be under benchmarks. I think that's one of my benchmarks, and a career that's 40 plus years in now, and 10 years in the digital social space. I've had such an amazing career, such a great life because of my amazing career, but I don't think it's ever been better. I mean, I am up 6 every morning, and I'm looking around social. I'm paying attention to stories. I'm digging into podcasts. Go check out YouTube. I'm excited.
I know you are, and I love that. I love that about you. Because I don't think I've ever met another person that is so fucking passionate about information, about learning, about education, about showing up consistently, about all those things. And watching you this last decade, it's been quite the decade for you, Gordon Miller. And the coming
And for
decade's
you.
going to be even more awesome.
Well, the coming decade includes retirement for me. I'll be 64 this year. I don't know how many more years I'll be doing what I'm doing, but I got a little ways to go. One last benchmark for both of us is our fur babies.
Aww.
Right? I mean, we both had adoptions within this last decade.
Yes.
And so
Cody Miller and Courage Jude, Lewis Kovner.
Yeah. And life-changing. Everybody go rescue a dog if you haven't.
Please adopt, don't shop. Yes,
this has been so much fun.
Gordon, thank you so much. I realized as we were talking that I never really formally introduced you because I just, of course, assume the world knows who you are. Gordon Miller is the CEO of hairbrained.me. And obviously, a bestie of Passion Squared and my personal bestest bestie. Gordon, thank you so much for being always so generous with your knowledge and with your wisdom and all of those things. We love you and are so grateful for you. Where can we find you on the internet, and where can we find Hairbrained?
Well, everything you said back at you, it's mutual. I adore you. And, we have these amazing conversations almost on a daily basis. So it's always fun when we get to share one with the world.
We get to record it. Yeah.
So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing so much good stuff always with your audience. So Hairbrained, you mentioned before, we're hairbrained.me in terms of online on the quote unquote internet, if we still use that word, hairbrained.me, not .com. Our online learning platform, HB Live Academy, is hblive.me. We've got the pro shop, hairbrain.pro. So we've got 3 different URLs when you're searching around with Google, where we sell tools. And then on social, we are Hairbrained on Facebook, and we are Hairbrained_official over at Instagram.
And you're Gordon
I'm Gordon M. I am on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook, but I don't do anything, so don't bother. On Instagram, it's Gordon M, but it's GORDNM. So just that first O, Gordon M, is me on
I
Instagram.
love it. You know what we didn't talk about when you were talking about Googling? We didn't talk about Alexa and Siri and voice.
Oh my gosh, that's
So
a
we're
whole
gonna
separate.
so let's plan on something towards the beginning of the year to talk about the future of
Absolutely. My
search.
Alexa is unplugged because I know otherwise she's listening here. And
Bitch.
I do want to take advantage of the opportunity and say also Hairbrain Conversations podcast. Look for us on Spotify, Google us. We're on the Apple platform. So yeah.
Yes. Awesome. All right. So, Gordon, thank you so much to everyone that's listened to this record long podcast. Thank you so much for staying with us. Happy fucking New Year,
Yes.
everybody! It's unreal. I will leave you with some just a few ideas of how I've been asked this a lot. How do I do resolutions or vision boarding or intentions or whatever? I don't do resolutions. Fuck resolutions. Gordon, are you a resolution person? After I just said fuck
No.
resolutions. Okay, good. New year, new you shit. Nope, not down for that either. What I am about though is asking some questions. How do I want to feel? How do I want to feel? How do I want to feel in 2020? How do I want to feel in this situation or this event or this whatever? I love that question. I vision board around that question. And then a big letting go process for me. What do you want to let go of? And it could be burning things or whatever process you want to do. And what do you want to take with you? Like, what do you want to take? It could be energy. It could be people. It could be processes. It could be platforms. It could, it could be anything. I really believe that the end of the year and this end of the decade thing is there's too much pressure. There's potential self-sabotage. There's all this shit, mind fuck stuff. Just don't buy into it. Do you, whatever process works for you. Um, and I want you also, like Gordon and I did, I want you to really sit and reflect on what you're proud of because we all have stories of like we could talk about all the awful stuff, all the horrible stuff, where we get into comparison, where we get into all of that's not healthy. What I want you all that are listening to think about is what you're proud of, and that could be just fucking surviving the decade and big high five. It could be some inside work that you did. It could be starting therapy. It could be opening a business. It could be growing an assistant. It could be all of those things. You are awesome. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. And I know it's so hard to do this, but do your very best to trust the process. Take it from two elders. Gordon and Nina, Gen X and a boomer. Try your very best to trust the process. You're in the right place. You're doing awesome. We love you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Gordon. Happy fucking New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Thanks so much for
and see everybody in
listening.
Long Beach.
Yes, we'll see everybody in January 2020. ISSD 2020. We cannot wait. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.